He canceled her card at the table, in front of his mother and the woman he'd been seeing behind her back, just to watch her flinch. The restaurant went quiet. Fork stopped moving. She didn't argue. She didn't even blink. She simply folded her hands and smiled because the hotel they were sitting in, every floor, every light, every reservation already belonged to her. Her name was Renata Voss, and by the end of tonight, every person laughing at her was going to remember it. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. You would not have noticed Renata if you passed her on the street. 61 years old, cardigan buttoned to the top, the kind of woman who let other people go first in line. 31 years married to a man named Douglas, who had just been named senior partner at his firm. Tonight was supposed to be his night. She had planned the dinner herself, at the rooftop restaurant of the Holloway Grand, a hotel so polished it didn't bother printing prices on the dessert menu. Douglas sat at the head of the table like the promotion had already changed the shape of his face. Beside him sat his mother, Corinne, who had never once in 3 decades called Renata by name. Only dear, said the way you'd say it to a waitress. Is that the same coat from last winter? Corinne asked, loud enough for the table. Douglas, darling, you're a senior partner now. People will start to wonder. Renata reached for her water and said nothing. She had learned, a long time ago, that some comments aren't questions. They're just people testing how much weight you can carry before you crack. Then the elevator doors opened, and a woman named Priscilla walked in, young, sharp-suited, already laughing before she reached the table. She sat close to Douglas, too close. Her hand found his forearm before she'd even ordered a drink. Everyone, this is Priscilla, Douglas said. From the office, brilliant girl. I invited her to celebrate with us. Nobody had told Renata. Corinne beamed like she'd been handed a gift. Renata watched her husband lean toward another woman's laughter and felt something she recognized immediately, not surprise. Confirmation. She had suspected for months. The late meetings. The phone turned face down on the nightstand. She had simply been hopping. The answer was different. Dinner arrived. Nobody at that table tasted it because they were too busy feeding on her instead. So what do you do all day? Priscilla asked, sweet as spoiled milk. Must be relaxing, not working. I manage our household, Renata said quietly. Someone has to, I suppose, Priscilla said, and the table laughed, Corinne loudest of all. Renata didn't fight it. She wasn't weak, and there's a difference most people never learn to see. A weak woman breaks at the table. Renata simply watched and remembered and kept a stillness in her chest that none of them had ever bothered to look for. Corinne wasn't finished, either. She dabbed her mouth with her napkin and leaned in, warming to her favorite subject. You know, my son could have married anyone, women with real careers, women who understand what it takes to sit at a table like this one. She waved her fork toward Renata. Instead, he settled for someone who irons his shirts. And what does it take? Renata asked, gently, genuinely curious. Corinne blinked, caught off guard by the calm in the question. Standing, she said finally. Knowing the right people, things you wouldn't understand. I see, Renata said, and went back to her water. Those 2 small words carried more than the whole table could have guessed. The bill came on a small silver tray. Douglas stopped the waiter with his hand raised like a king, granting an audience. Let my wife handle this one, he said. She's good with the little things. Renata set her card down without hesitation. The waiter walked away. Douglas's smile didn't move because he already knew what was coming. That morning, from his office, he had quietly frozen the account tied to that card. On purpose. He wanted the room to watch his plain, quiet wife fumble in front of people who mattered. The waiter returned, leaned in, and whispered. But Douglas spoke over him, loud enough for 3 surrounding tables to hear. Declined. Renata, are we short again? He spread his hands, performing now. Go on, ask the table nicely. Maybe someone will cover you. Corinne gasped with delight. Priscilla covered her smile with a napkin, her eyes not bothering to hide anything at all. Strangers turned in their chairs. A waiter froze mid-step near the wall. The whole gold-lit room waited to watch a quiet woman shrink. She did not shrink. She folded her napkin, slow and neat, the way you'd fold something you intended to keep. And then she smiled, not a broken smile, a calm one. The kind of smile that should have frightened every single person at that table, if any of them had known her at all. The restaurant manager came hurrying over, not to embarrass her, but to her side, bending low, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Voss, forgive me, I didn't realize it was you tonight. Is everything to your satisfaction?" Douglas didn't hear it. He was too busy laughing with his mother. But you should be asking the same question I was asking. Why would the manager of a 5-star hotel bow his head to the woman they were all mocking? To understand that, we have to go back, years back, to a laundromat in Toledo and a woman with a tin box of quarters. Long before rooftop dinners, Renata was a girl folding other people's clothes for money after school. In a laundromat her aunt ran on a street that never made it onto tourist maps. Her aunt, Odette, taught her one rule above all others: never shortchange a customer, even when you're the one who needs the extra dollar. One slow winter, when the register was nearly empty, a customer overpaid by mistake dropped an extra bill without noticing. Young Renata almost let it slide into the drawer. Odette caught her hand. "Baby," she said, "money remembers how you treated people when you had none. Give it back. It always finds its way home to people who keep their hands honest." Renata gave the money back. She never forgot the lesson. She carried it quietly, patiently, into every choice she made for the next 4 decades. Into the small real estate parcels she began buying in her 20s with money nobody knew she'd saved. Into the hotel group she built slowly, under her maiden name, while the world assumed she was simply resting at home. Into boardrooms she never once bragged about entering. Odette used to say, "Loud money is scared money. It's showing you what it doesn't trust will still be there tomorrow. Quiet money isn't worried about tomorrow at all." By the time Renata married Douglas, broke, ambitious, hungry, she had already learned exactly what people become the moment they believe you have nothing. She just never imagined her own husband would be one of them. When they met, Douglas had holes in the soles of his shoes and a folder of rejection letters he kept in his desk drawer like a wound he refused to let heal. Renata never once looked at what he lacked. She saw what he could become, and for years she poured herself into him quietly, typing his cover letters at midnight, believing in him on the nights he couldn't believe in himself, celebrating every small win like it was a parade. She built that man's confidence with her own 2 hands. She never once asked him to build hers back. After that dinner, things didn't get better. They got worse, the way things always do right before they turn. Priscilla started coming by the house, not asking, just arriving, walking through Renata's rooms like she already owned the furniture. She ran a finger along the mantel one afternoon and said, "Some women are built for staying home. Some are built for boardrooms. You just stay comfortable, sweetie. I'll take it from here." Corinne began packing boxes of her own. "Just making a little room," she said, smiling the way a snake smiles right before it decides you're not worth the venom. Renata pressed her palm flat against the wall and breathed, and let it pass over her the way she had learned to let so much pass over her. There were moments the truth sat right behind her teeth, moments she could have ended the whole performance with a single sentence. She didn't. She wanted to see, once and for all, whether the man she'd loved for 31 years would choose her when he believed she had nothing to offer. Love that only shows up when you're useful was never love to begin with, and she needed the truth more than she needed comfort. So she let him show her exactly who he was, and he did. Weeks after that dinner, Douglas filed for divorce. He slid the papers across their kitchen table, the same table where she'd once helped him rehearse interview answers at midnight. "You came into this marriage with nothing," he said. "You'll leave with nothing. Don't make it difficult." He left the room already on the phone with Priscilla. Renata sat alone in the dark for a long while. Then her phone rang, a number only a handful of people had. She answered, listened, and said only, "Set the meeting. Thursday. Make sure everyone is there." They told Douglas it was a settlement signing. He brought an audience on purpose, Priscilla on his arm, Corinne ready for a front row seat, already recording on her phone. The meeting was on the top floor of a glass tower downtown, the Halloway Grand's corporate offices, the same hotel from that dinner. The elevator opened onto a boardroom with floor-to-ceiling windows over the whole city. The moment Renata walked in, every executive at that table stood. Douglas laughed nervously. "What is this?" The chairman stepped forward. "For those who don't know her, this is the founder and majority owner of Voss Hospitality Group. This hotel, and 11 others in this city, answer to her." The room went quiet in pieces. Corinne's hand slid off Douglas's arm on its own. Priscilla was already backing toward the door. She'd never loved Douglas, only the ladder she thought he was climbing. "You wanted a room to watch me beg," Renata said, calm, not cruel. "So I made sure a room would watch." She slid a folder across the table. "The account you froze to embarrass me was never really yours to freeze. And your promotion, Douglas, the firm that gave it to you, runs on financing from this company." Her voice caught only once. "I would have paid that bill 1,000 times over gladly if you had simply loved me. That was all I ever wanted, not the title, just to be chosen." She stood, gathered her things, and walked out into the daylight, unhurried, her head level. Renata could have taken everything from Douglas. She chose not to, not out of weakness, but because Odette had taught her long ago exactly what kind of woman she intended to be. These days she has a porch. Simple, white railing, morning coffee, real friends who loved her back when she had nothing to offer them. No one there measures her by what she owns. They never needed to. A quiet woman is not a weak woman. The people who measure your worth by your bank balance will always lose count, because your real value was never something they could see in the first place. By the end of that month, the financing that had quietly propped up Douglas's firm shifted. No drama, no announcement, just decisions made in quiet rooms. The corner office he'd worn like a crown came apart in his hands, the same way it had been built, without him ever really holding it at all. He had spent 31 years standing on a foundation his wife owned, and she didn't have to push it. She simply stopped holding it up. Priscilla didn't stay to watch him fall. She was never in love with Douglas, only with the ladder she thought he was climbing. The moment the climbing stopped, she stopped too and moved on to the next one without so much as a goodbye. A woman like that never says goodbye. She just finds the next tall thing to stand beside. Corinne called eventually. Left messages, warm now, calling Renata my daughter for the first time in 31 years, the word offered cheap, only after it was needed. Renata listened to one message. Then she set the phone down and didn't call back. Some doors don't slam shut. They just stay closed quietly, and that's its own kind of answer. Don't ever try to make yourself feel bigger by making someone else small. And don't let anyone convince you that your quiet is the same as your weakness. If Renata's story reminded you of your own quiet strength, type "balance" in the comments so she hears you. Share this with the one person who needs to remember theirs. And subscribe, because next time, the one they underestimate might be the one who owns it all.